welcome once again to our Caranine Hour, in which we discuss matters related to the development of our beloved Bahama land. This evening, I invite you to share in a conversation with Ms. Ayla Roberts, lecturer at BTVI, and a young Bahamian who is trying to make her way in the world, in this Bahamian economy and in this Bahamian environment. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you with us, and I hope you can find a few more younger people to come and help us with our program. You first of all tell us, your high school was here in New Providence.
Correct. So I attended St. Anne's High School, and from there I completed my undergraduate degree in psychology at Mount Allison University in Canada. And from there I furthered my studies in psychology at Nova Southeastern University in Florida.
Yes.
And having graduated with a degree in psychology, I had the opportunity, very fortunate, to have worked with esteemed psychiatrist, my apologies, Dr. David Allen, as well as closely with the director of the Bahamas Crisis Center, Dr. Sandra Dean Patterson. And so I've had a pretty good overview of psychology and have had the privilege of working very closely to persons who have done tremendous work within our society.
And you have a lot of experience under your belt.
I have luckily gained quite a bit of experience in the field.
So what brought you to BTVI?
So although I am a counseling psychologist, I've always had a passion for education, and even within my family, among my friends, persons have always said, I think you're going to go into education at some point in your life. And so the opportunity presented itself, and I have been with the BTVI family for a little over a year now, and it has afforded me the ability to work closely with students, some just coming out of high school, some adult professional learners in the subject matters of psychology, humanities, as well as English. And so I have quite a load under my belt that I'm managing.
Quite a load, I should
Quite
think.
a load, yes.
The English must be challenging, isn't it?
It does present its challenges. You know, English is one of those very technical languages to learn, and so managing a class with people of various abilities, it can be a little challenging to ensure that everybody is garnering the skill sets they need to learn and to function as they should within the classroom.
Because the English is, at least the setting you are in is a technical setting.
Indeed.
Most of the areas are highly technical.
Highly technical.
But still you need to be able to read the instructions and the manuals if you are to be able to function.
Exactly, and these fundamentals you take with you, you know, throughout your daily life, be it in the workplace, how you properly would write a resume, how you handle conversation, how you communicate. And so we try to communicate to the students that although they're not pursuing studies in English per se, that they need these basics to carry them throughout their daily lives.
But employers complain that it's very difficult to get most people to fill out their application forms, that people are challenged.
It can be a challenge. We do have our challenges. But I do believe with motivation and guidance, people are able to improve their abilities if they want to, and if they're open to what is afforded to them with regard to learning and instruction.
And in terms of your dealing with the humanities, how is that scattered? I mean, you have a smaller group of people who do that, or is it across the board?
Well, it all depends on the enrollment, how many persons register for that particular class. So that could vary. For example, this summer right now, we have a pretty small group compared to the other semesters where you can have a full class load. So at present, the study of humanities, some may not be aware with the subject matter, but it teaches you about the human condition and how people develop from past to present-day society, and just different peoples of the world, their culture and experiences. And I think it's an excellent class in that most of us will not have the opportunity to go beyond our shores. And so it is kind of a gateway to see what's happening beyond what you're accustomed to, and it equips you too to deal with people who are not like yourself.
But do you deal with books or videos or because I would not imagine that many of the students at BTVI would be too fond of reading because I mean.
You have a mixture. You have some students who aren't as motivated when it comes to the required
Right,
readings, but what I try to do is I try to attend to student preferences for learning.
Okay.
So it's already inherently difficult because you have to manage attention spans, you have to increase motivation levels, you have students coming from a full day of work, students who are parents, students who are dealing with their independent, emotional, and other issues. And so I try to create a classroom environment which is not just specifically tailored to textbook reading.
Right, yeah.
I would use videos, I bring in current articles, newspapers, and then I encourage them to share their own life experience too, so that they don't feel as though I'm just there to control the setting,
Yes.
but
So
they have a voice and say as well.
So it is interactive.
Very interactive.
And
Very
you
interactive.
find that stimulating yourself.
It is very stimulating, especially for me, because it's quite difficult to sit and stare at people, and you can automatically sense when there's a shutdown or there's kind of a defense toward the learning process. So we try to talk, engage, and make it a fun process as best as possible.
But how do they take to learning about other cultures?
Persons are pretty receptive. You know, each of us, we hold our biases, especially cultural biases, but when you showcase videos about certain cultural norms that persons have never heard about, or traditions in certain villages, and one video that I've often shown students is the Umoja village within Kenya, a women's only village, and how that came about as a means of women protecting themselves due to gender-based violence. So when you introduce new material, for the most part, students are receptive and they ask questions, and then it extends into further discourse.
But how do they feel about Bahamian culture?
You get mixed, mixed views. Some students, when they talk about Bahamian culture, the automatic thought is culture. When we talk about culture, it's Jankanu, or culture is cuisine. But then the emerging discussion for my students is, how do you define culture when culture is not fixed? Culture is forever changing. And so that's come up frequently among students. How do we define culture today in our society when we have a mixture of groups of people living and experiencing this Bahamas and contributing to the Bahamas?
And it's always evolving.
Indeed.
But in terms of, is music a big part of it? In terms of, I think certainly the younger people would be very much into music.
Very much into music, very much into music. And I think for a lot of them, they express that music speaks to the issues that that resonate with them, that many people cannot give voice to. And so a lot of artists are able to not only present people's own experience through lyrics, but people hear and see themselves through this presentation of expression. So for many youth and many students, music is a very significant part of their day-to-day experience.
We're talking about the place of music in the lives of the students and also in the life of the community.
Correct.
There's what I call a renewed respect for Bahamian music, but I think we need, if you think about the cultures of the world in terms of how do we broaden that so that people get a better understanding of the place of music in the lives of people without losing respect for what's going on locally. And I think we tend to have a narrow focus if we just think of, say, Bahamian music, or look at what's happening in the Caribbean now. You have, in Jamaica, they have their particular brand, and then in Trinidad, they emphasize soca. And then across the islands, there's a mixture of all. It's a kind of a melting pot.
A melting pot.
Going on.
Which is indeed happening.
So that to talk about it, one has to, I suppose, be a bit specific in terms of what you are referring to, because just the title music is a kind of a blanket thing. But you find that your students are interested.
Yes, they are interested in many aspects of culture. Something that you said moments ago, Bahamian music is changing. And so we have a lot of up-and-coming artists who are also gaining international acclaim for their writings, for their production. And so it really speaks to Bahamians just now being, I think, a little bit more open as to what not just music is, but how we experience culture, how we express culture, and what that means to people who experience our Bahamas.
And I suppose there's a greater receptivity as opposed to the more narrow approach to life that was certainly when I was growing up, long before your time, that the focus is much narrower than it is today. So that's an encouraging sign. But in terms of your major area, the psychology,
Yes.
teaching psychology at a technical college, that must have its challenges, to put it mildly.
And you present that as the concern, yes, at a technical college, but I think that my approach to the subject matter and my objectives in delivering content and information, I try to simplify for whoever that learner is. So whether it's a technical learner, whether it's a person attending, at a higher level of education, I try to explain as simply as possible so that whomever is receiving the information could not only understand it, but apply that to their day-to-day experience. And so luckily, when I enter the classroom and I teach psychology, I'm able to bring some of my own experience to the classroom. And I think that sets that particular subject apart from any students who have me as an instructor, because it's not just the theory from the text. It's some case studies that I am able to present to them and help them to navigate and make sense of, with confidentiality in mind, but it humanizes the subject matter, and it makes it a lot more, I think, enjoyable to be a part of the process of studying the subject of psychology.
Then it becomes less theoretical.
Correct.
Because I should think you have to introduce them to the various theories in psychology.
Yes.
To be truthful to the subject.
Truthful to the subject.
But at the same time, to make it relevant and to enable them to comprehend.
What
and
is
also
happening.
to see the place of psychology in everyday life.
Everyday life. And that's so important. I think we think that psychology is disconnected, but it is such a critical subject to study in that it affects your day-to-day experience. And I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about it later on in this segment, but psychology really is the foundation for how you see yourself, how you function in the world, and how you relate to other people. And so most have given me positive feedback in that not only have they seen some areas of change within themselves, but they too have carried a lot of the subject matter into their workplaces and relationships. And so
you
they've
mentioned
expressed excitement about the subject.
Mention the keyword relationship.
Yes.
Surely that's an extremely important aspect of doing psychology.
Correct.
Because one of the failures of our society is the breakdown of relationships and also the absence of trust in so many relationships. And if you can help people to refocus and to understand what's actually taking place. Do you get the experience in doing this that sometimes you can see the change in people's faces as certain points are made?
Undoubtedly. So certain topics within psychology, as you would imagine, would elicit more curiosity for students, in particular when we talk about mental illness, okay? The diagnosis of mental illness, the signs, the symptoms, and the treatment. And so there's this innate curiosity. Well, how does this happen, and why do some people experience this as opposed to others? And so they come with their whole host of questions, and I tell them, that I'm not, in psychology we use the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, and I say, I'm not the DSM as a person, but I can speak to some theories that explain why people experience the things that they do, and why some of us are resilient and others may not be. And There's no exact answer for any of this, right?
But I'm happy that you are doing it in that context, because it
Yes.
must be helpful to give people a better handle on how they approach their own relationship. Also, how they think about themselves.
Indeed, which is most important, how you see yourself.
Good. So we'll make our first break for the evening at this point, and then we'll go into the talk about mental health.
Okay.